Okay, so is old jazz lame? Is it unhip? No. Old jazz is, or as I like to call it, early jazz, is very difficult actually, and people would know that if they tried to play it. It's not that easy to play. First of all, something that sounds authentic, that sounds like real jazz, and second of all, something that's your own phrase that's not like a lick or licks and patterns that you stole from other people. You're never going to be able to memorize 12,000 different lines and to recite. And thirdly, you're supposed to be improvising anyway. I mean, you're not really playing jazz if you're just cutting and pasting a bunch of other people's licks. So the real way to play jazz is to invent the phrases as you go. As you become advanced, you will have zero need for any kind of licks whatsoever. You just feel your way through using a well-developed ear. That's another thing, like early jazz develops your ear in a way that other styles of jazz really don't. I mean, bebop is great, but bebop lines are kind of formulaic, and you're also playing at such a high rate of speed that it becomes like impossible to improvise. Impossible to go from playing your memorized licks that you learned out of the Charlie Parker Omni book or whatever to like actually creating phrases in real time. So I don't know why it is, but people insist on playing that way. It's probably one of the things that's killing or has killed jazz, is people playing it inauthentically. So yeah, coming up with your own stuff and doing it in real time is kind of the challenge. So I thought we would take an old tune, Nuage by Django Reinhardt, who's an awesome jazz guitar player. I mean, if I had it my way, they would listen to Django, Charlie Christian, and Barney Kessel, and they would take all of their like modern jazz albums and pretty much like throw them in the trash. I mean, at least with regard to like what you're gonna use and what's gonna help you learn how to play. So I guess I'll just start playing the changes to Nuage, and I'll just like talk about what to play on each chord. Okay, so it's in G, and it starts off with these pickup notes, and now it's in A flat. It moved up a half step for the first chord, and it's a 2-5, and then back to G, playing 2-5 in G, and then simple G6, 1-2-3 chord, same thing again, so easy, right? And then so let's start playing on that. So first of all, just think of this as an E flat 9 chord, and then the old way of playing jazz, which is the cool way, is chord-based soloing. So instead of fancy modes and Lydian chromatic concept and all these things that the innovative musicians started doing in the in the 50s or whatever, like forget about all that. Back in the day, all they had was the chord shape. What should we play on this chord? How about how about you embellish the notes that are in the chord? So that it's an E flat dominant 9 chord. That being said, you are going to think of it as a B flat minor 6 chord. So there's your chord tones. So they had a way to extend those notes by using the chromatic lower neighbors. So I'm really just thinking of these 3 notes, and then everything else. then same chord down a half step. So they have this kind of, I don't know, like here's the D7 chord. You can, these little like classical turns. I think that Django got this from listening to, like, I don't know, Mozart, because he loved classical music. It's a very romantic, pretty sound. So yeah, D7 is really like A minor 6. So here you go. So, you know, Django, I don't know. I don't like to just steal people's phrases. I want to know, I want to understand how they were thinking, and I want to be able to like come up with my own phrases that they never played that sound like authentic jazz that I'm making up as I go along and not relying on any kind of licks or anything. So, you know, nothing substitutes for a well-developed sense of melody in an ear. That's really all there is. That's people should be thinking in those terms when they play jazz, and not like, oh, I'm going to use this lick now that I learned that's like Django or somebody, you know, played this lick on this song, and that's not why it's jazz vocabulary. It's jazz vocabulary just because it works and it sounds nice and has a certain sound to it. And you've noticed that if you try to play these tunes and you try to play your own stuff, but without knowing what you're doing, it really does sound like total crap. It's really a difficult or impossible thing to fake. So, you know, and it's really all just coming from your internal sense of melody. Like your instrument, the guitar in this case, is nothing to me but a dictation instrument for the ideas that you hear in your head, and then your job is to know, if you hear a phrase in your head, to know where those notes are on your instrument and play them. So it's kind of different than what people think. They think that you're just memorizing a bunch of like jazz licks or something, and this is a complete waste of time, and it's like kind of I think it's like a posery kind of thing, not to be harsh or anything. I mean, like young students, they're going to have to like transcribe and everything, but I notice they just never get to the point where they're like, you know, really improvising, and certainly not like playing these old tunes and sounding like you know, believable, authentic jazz phrases. So yeah, we really just made it through the first 2 chords so far because I've been talking. There's the 1 chord G major. So let's see. Where does that stuff come from? Those are my ideas. I'm making them up as I go along. So. So yeah, it does that progression twice, and then it basically does this. It does the same progression, except this time it's targeting the 4 chord C major. So you're going to get E flat minor to A flat 7, and then back to the actual key. You know, like it fakes you out by going up a half step from what the key is. For some reason, things that are a half step away sound related to the other things, so like it actually doesn't sound that bad to like jump up a half step and then resolve back. So like, you know, so E flat minor, so the trick is, I mean, they have these shapes that they use in gypsy jazz and Dixieland jazz guitar playing, but then they don't just play the shape. You don't just like arpeggiate. You know, that's they would use this technique where you use the chromatic lower neighbors. So here's the, you know, here's my chord tone. That's not a chord tone, but I play it anyway, and then leave that open by you delay the resolution. You don't have to go straight back to the note that you're chromatically underneath. You can, there's like several different enclosures that you can use. So you can go right to it. You can start on the inside note, go out, and then back in. You can start on the inside note, go out, and then play the diatonic upper neighbor, and then return. You can add a little trill, or Django had his 2 fingers, so he'd kind of he used this technique to switch positions. So yeah, any of those chromatic ideas? That's a nice phrase. Now let's switch back to the key of C. So I'm really using just the same shape down a half step. So yeah, now you gotta play out on a C major chord. Using a lot of A flat notes here. It's like you're using the chromatic lower neighbor to the 6. It's such a nice note. The chromatic lower neighbor to the 3rd also. So here's C6. You might go. There's the A flat. Now it's resolved. Here's the same chromatic, something like a classical turn. I forget what that's called. It's not in. I think it is called a turn. Then it goes to C minor, out of nowhere, just and then Django shreds his awesomest long C minor 6th thing. But the basic idea. So here's one, the minor 6 arpeggio. I'll jump up to a position. It exists in all these different positions. Gotta kind of shred something over this chord if you can. And then back to G major. And then the final turnaround. It's the same as the, what a simple song. I used to think this, these songs, they used to confuse me, oh, man, that's a lot of chords. It's a big long sheet, but it's just really some 2 5-1s in there that, they're up a half step, some of them. So yeah, again, yeah. And then 2-5 back to G. So, I think they tend to just not think of the 2 chord and just the 2 chord is really just extending it in a very, I don't know, gypsy or early jazz sounding thing to do is just play over the 2nd chord of it. So I'm thinking of D7 the whole time. So yeah, actually when someone plays an A minor 7 chord and you're just so I'm using those turns. Another interesting thing that Django would do that was tritone substitution. So people think that those came about much later, but Django was already doing them. They would play D7 chord, and he would just play think of a G flat 7 in his head. You can switch halfway through. You can do like half D7 and then half A flat 7. So, and then all over, just an unaltered chord. So yeah, that's pretty wild. If someone plays this chord, and your first thought is to go. But anyway, there you go. The sixth that's the pretty note for major chords. And then and bebop comes along later, and then all of a sudden everybody thinks that the major 7 chord is like, is the jazzy sound. But really the 6th is the awesome extension, not the 7th. Just play that over a major chord, play like a G major chord, and play an E note, and tell me that doesn't feel jazzy to you. So hope that helps, and good luck sounding authentic, and make sure you're improvising